moved forward by so many people in the room tonight. Thank you so much for making time for us tonight. We have an exciting presentation for you. My name is Andy Kim. I'm the director of your library. I'm not going to speak a lot tonight. I'm going to leave it up to the professionals who to speak way better than I can. But just really quick, tonight, first, Roger Parfit, the library president, will give opening remarks, and then we'll go right into the presentation. Adam Semmel, managing partner at Skidmore, Owens & Merrill, will guide us through the plan here. And then we set aside some time after the presentation for to take any questions. Both the SOM team and Roger and George Grafferson, one of our library trustees, will be available to answer any questions. We will ask that you start queuing up on the left outside aisle to come here to the podium and ask your question to those on the panel. A lot of familiar and friendly faces. Again, thank you so much. Without further ado, Roger.
Thanks, Andy. As Andy said, my name is Roger Parfit, and I'm here as basically the representative of the Board of Trustees. So I thought the first order of business would be to introduce all the other trustees that are here tonight. George Grafferson, give us a little wave. Okay, Mike Pope, he's hiding there. Beth Shaker. Jim Pfeiffer. Jim Pfeiffer. Dan Weisman. And Linda's maybe not here. No, she had another commitment. It's not. Why are we here tonight? This building has served Geico for 83 years, but at this point has many urgent maintenance issues, and its layout and general function just no longer serves the needs of a library for Geico. We're here tonight to listen to ideas on how we might improve on it, build on it, and make it into a great asset for Geico. So how did we get here? How did we end up with SOM making a presentation, giving us ideas? How did we end up here? It's been kind of a long journey. On the board itself, our librarians every month are forced to bring to us a number of maintenance issues. They're not whining. They take care of them. They don't need our help to take care of them, but there is a $5,000 expenditure limit that requires board approval. So there are many, many items that they have to bring to the board. So increasingly things like an old and inadequate plumbing system, which results in frequent leaks in the basement, and HVAC system, which is patched together with a number of different technologies, which results in the building getting hot in one space, cold in another space. Electrical system, which I shudder to tell you, is still cloth-covered wires, and provides about a third of the electricity we really need to run this building. So there's a lot of issues like that, and after several board meetings where that's what we hear every time is I had to deal with this, I had to deal with that, and an example would be the electric. So we had a problem with the electric, so we had to replace the box, and it's $5,000. And the board would stop and say, "That's good. I'm glad we took care of the problem, but is that really the right answer? Because our electrical input is not what we need." So all of that resulted in us in 2021 hiring an engineering company with a lot of experience in libraries to look at the building and give us a plan for what does the library need done, what maintenance can we expect over the next 5 years. So there's a lot of stuff there. There's over 100 items that they listed. I think it's like 300 items. Over 100 items that we need to take care of, and more than 20 of them were listed as critical. We need to take care of them right away. Okay, so that provided us with a long list, and they did a good job of giving us a lot of maintenance that we needed to do. But Then we said to ourselves, if we do all that, then what do we have? We have the same building we have now, and this library just doesn't provide the structure that we need to conduct the business that we want to conduct in 2024. So the next step was to start working on a strategic plan. So we did that in 2023, and we used a lot of input from you, the Glencoe community, to create this strategic plan. Our first finding, the citizens of Glencoe love the library. They love its warm, inviting atmosphere. They love the beautiful facade on Park Avenue. They love to be honest, the vaulted ceiling in here. This room is almost always mentioned when you ask any kind of survey of what do you think about the library. And it's not a building feature, but the other feature that's actually what we really love about the library is the librarians. So, you know, they're warm and welcoming, smart and knowledgeable and helpful, and they really help create the library that we all love. Okay, but in the strategic plan, you said there are certain things you love about the building, but there are many things that you don't love about the building, and especially it needs to be more functional. It needs to be more comfortable. Again, we talked about hot, cold spots, talked about a variety of different problems with it being comfortable and really responsive to what we need. And in particular, you identified the need for the library to operate as a third place to gather for a variety of things. Gather with your friends, have a meeting here, do homework here, have a lot of ways to get together at the library. So, with that in mind, the strategic plan identified some specific items that needed to be addressed in the building. Obviously, starting with the maintenance issues, which we have learned about. Creating more meeting rooms for working, getting together, studying, all kinds of small groups. A larger, more comfortable space for community events. Better use of the lower floor. We no longer say basement. The lower floor. Better acoustics. If anybody's been here during a children's program, you can celebrate how we all get to experience the children's program. Improved accessibility, which we need to do for all patrons. And improved infrastructure. The Glencoe has some important goals for CO2 emissions. We need to be looking at what the library can do to improve our goals, to improve our output in those areas. And last but not least, its beautiful location on Wyman Green, which we definitely can find ways to improve. So that we proved that at the end of last year, and immediately upon approving the plan, then we realized, okay, this strategic plan says we need to do some things in the building. We need a process. We need a way to identify how are we going to move forward with making improvements. So what we initiated was a process to identify the best firm to prepare a master space plan. So to give us a clear plan of what we are going to do with this space. We held a request for qualifications and received a large number of replies. So we had more than 15 potential architectural firms, and out of that, and we went through and interviewed a number of them in some detail, and at the end of the day, we picked SOI. Why did we pick SOI? Well, there's really three reasons. One is, in all their presentations, they proved to us that of the different firms that contacted us, that we reviewed, they really did the best job of listening to what we wanted and what we needed. That was very important. Two, they've done some great work in different libraries, pretty much the same exact team in SOI, and some great work in other libraries, very different from each other, and they're different from Glencoe, but they are showing an ability for this team to listen to what that community needs and to respond to it and provide something that it really is unique and very accessible for that community. And in this whole process, they really provided us the most interesting and innovative ideas for things we can do to the library to just make it a better space. So they understood for this 83-year-old building which aspects of it were really critical for us to retain, and which aspects of it needed to be improved, changed, or even created. What do we need that we didn't have now? So that's why we picked SOM. And they've now completed a draft of their master space plan. We find it's very exciting and provides many ideas to respond to the needs that you provided us when we did our strategic plan. And tonight, you get an opportunity to listen to the ideas they've come up with, and to show us some of the ideas and have some interesting visuals for us to look at. But the space plans they're showing us tonight, they're preliminary. They're not going to be finalized until after we hear your feedback, and the board has a chance to synthesize your feedback and work together with the SOM team to come up with a final plan. So we are very eager to hear what you have to say about everything that we're presenting tonight. So without further ado, we introduce Adam Semmel, who is a partner at SOM, as Andy said. Adam is an award-winning architect who's worked on several successful libraries. He's also a long-time Glencoe resident, and he tells me, I have people in this room who can confirm on that. He tells me that he learned to read in the children's department in the library, and he's also a frequent patron now with his own children. Yeah.
Thank you, Roger. Thank you all for coming. This turnout's amazing, and it's a testament to the role the library plays in the community of Glencoe. It's really a treasure. We hear that over and over again through this whole process. It's a privilege for us to be working on this with the board and the staff members. And before we get into the ideas and the vision we're bringing forward tonight, I just want to thank the entire board and Andy for the time they put in. We can't do this alone. It's been a real collaboration. The staff and the management team in the library has given us a lot of their time. They've been very generous, helping us understand the needs and desires for the building. And as Roger said, that team is truly a big reason why the library itself is so beloved here. And in particular, I want to thank Roger and George for the time they put in. They do pay, right? Pretty well. They've met with us a ton, a couple times a week, sometimes over this entire summer, just to really make sure we understand, again, the needs and the wants, and being a kind of conduit for the community here. So they've had a huge role and influence on what you're about to see tonight. Introducing my team here from Skidmore, Owings & Merrill, we have Ian Kaminsky-Coughlin, our project manager, Bree Butterberg, our junior designer. This is Jason Fisher, our studio head and lead designer, and then Andrea Telly, who is our collaborator. This will be our 5th library together. Our 5th library. For the first 3, she was our client. Andrea is a librarian and a library administrator. She spent her whole career at the Chicago Public Libraries, finishing there as the commissioner of the Chicago Public Libraries. And then she had the humility to come work with us on Appleton Library, which is opening in a few months, where Jason led the design in his hometown. So, with no further ado, we're going to start with Andrea talking a little bit about what libraries are today and the library of the future.
Hi, good evening, everyone. It's absolutely my pleasure to be here with you. As Adam said, we have been working together for far more than 10 years, probably 10 or 12 years together. And the first library that we designed at Chicago Public Library was the Chinatown branch. And it was actually the first Chicago Public Library that was designed especially for its community. The Chicago Public Library, for probably the 20 or 30 years before that, had been building prototype libraries. But also being in communities where we had library facilities that were built starting in 1904 all the way up to the 1980s and 90s, we realized that we were putting the same kind of model of services into buildings where library services had surpassed that model quite quickly. And we all know, I mean, our computers are in our hands right now, right? So when I came to work with these guys after I retired from Chicago Public Library, I've kind of been calling myself the architect whisperer for the librarians and the librarian whisperer for the architects. So I've been having a wonderful time doing that. Next slide. So when we've been talking about what a 21st century library is, putting 21st century or having 21st century services in our public libraries, we really kind of want to kind of level the playing field about what are the services and features that public libraries should have in this environment. Of course, a library is a content repository. I hope books never go away. I don't anticipate that books will ever go away, and so that is really our bread and butter. Libraries are an intersection of ideas. We've all heard about the information highway. And that information highway usually went in one direction for many, many years. People would come into the library, they would ask the librarian a question, and off you would go with your research. But now we're finding that patrons are coming in, and we're learning from our patrons just as much as they're learning from us. So we really see sort of an exchange of information rather than going in one direction. Libraries are gathering spaces. This is a perfect example of it, but I'm sure you come here to see movies. I'm sure you come here to listen to lectures. I'm sure you learn about gardening. I'm sure you can listen to music here in this library. At many Chicago public libraries and other public libraries, people come to vote. They would come to register to vote. They bring preschool classes. So it's a gathering space. Speaking of preschool, it's also a learning space. We talk about how we see patrons coming in when they're children and then see them sort of come back when they bring their own children. Is that right, Pam? Okay, just want to make sure. And then libraries are tech spaces now. So as I mentioned, I remember actually having to file a lot of cards in the card catalog in my early days, but then we moved on to film, and then we moved on to computers to be able to search books that way. We, had computers and copy machines, and now we have 3D printers. What's going to be next? We have to be prepared for what is going to be next. And then finally, a library, and I know people might not like this, but a library can be loud nowadays. You want an active, lively space. You want people to come in and have fun and wonder what's going on in here. But you also still want to have those quiet spaces where people can come in, grab their book, and sit and have a space that's really all their own. So in kind of looking at what a library is, it's still so many things to so many people. And you just want to have the flexibility and the openness to understand that.
So what we're going to do tonight is Jason's going to walk us through the process to date, our learning, the time we spent over the summer, first understanding the needs, again, meeting with the board, the staff and the management team, aligning the goals, presenting a series of ideas, bouncing them off, taking feedback. Then we took all that back and did a cost estimate with our cost estimating team. We brought that back to the board and worked with them to massage that into the design response we're going to do tonight. So Jason's going to take us through kind of the learnings and the challenges and the opportunities, and then we're going to walk into this design vision. We'll share the cost, where we think the cost is today, and then we'll talk about next steps.
Okay, so, you saw all the red dots across there. Those were kind of the official meeting once or twice a week, and we're engaging the staff and the library board. But in between that, our design team, we were kind of digging in all spaces of the building, taking a look at everything. We have some slides to show about that, but it's our job to listen to you guys and consolidate all the information. So again, tonight is another opportunity to hear back your feedback and incorporate it. Obviously, we know a lot of the good things about the library. Roger was just talking about, obviously, the room there now, the beautiful woodwork that you see, the warmth, the character, the fireplaces, of course. We all love the exterior. Just walking up from the train today, there was a nice kind of warm glow from the inside. That, you know, it's a welcoming place. It almost feels like you're walking into your friend's home or into your family member's home. And then the image on the lower right is actually the children's desk. And obviously, whether you're going upstairs into the children's department or arriving here at the ground level, you're obviously greeted by a very wonderful staff. And that's another thing that we all really love about the library. And I think that's something that we heard very clearly from the patrons and residents that we've been talking to. But there's a few things that maybe we don't exactly love about the building. I think we all kind of understand a little bit of the places that could be. And through multiple staff tours, photos, time spent in every single patron space, we kind of got a good understanding of the things that we know that is sort of off limits, don't touch, keep it as is, in terms of finishes and the way that the building feels. And then spaces that we know that there's a lot of room for improvement. I like the photo of all of us kind of standing in the lower level and trying to imagine what we can do there. And that was one of the first tours where we were kind of checking out all the spaces. So we think there's a lot of potential across all these spaces, and then we're excited to show that to you in just a moment. So we also got into the spaces that most patrons don't see. There's, underneath the stair, there's the coffee machine and the sink. There's very awkward storage rooms that I have to say the children's department has found every single square inch of space they can find. There's also a very, very large lack of office spaces. So there's a couple of office spaces. Those are actually kind of some of the bigger offices that are in the building. So it's getting to try to get behind the scenes so that we understand everything that the staff needs to make sure that the patron and the community is served very well. In addition to kind of the finishes and the spaces and the staff use spaces and the public use spaces, there's a lot of mechanical systems and electrical systems and plumbing systems that are in the building. And here are several photos of some of these piecemeal interventions that have been done over the years to make sure that the basement doesn't have any water in it, to make sure that as comfortable as we can get with the current building, we're kind of getting there, but with many complaints and repairs. And then spaces that are kind of highly underutilized and very difficult to navigate. So us as architects working with our MEP engineers, we've kind of done a full catalog of all the spaces and then some proposed improvements that we'll go through. So we spent a couple days doing almost like all-day staff workshops, and this was just to get every single point of view and all the different spaces in the building, understand their needs, make sure that we were hearing them, making sure that we were hearing to their specific patrons, that we're telling them things and responding to them. So we had a bunch of workshops that we spent a couple days here. Those workshops consisted of questions that we prompted to the staff. Not necessarily as questions like yes or no, I like this or I like that, but just as a way to engage in an open conversation with what the real needs were of the building. We got a ton of feedback, we had lists and notes, and we were all taking meeting minutes and all coming back to our offices at SLM to make sure that we kind of tracked everything, consolidated it, pulled out the really important points so that we could incorporate it into our design. We also spent a lot of time here and there, in particular, building essentially a digital model of the entire library. It's an old building. There have been renovations, additions, updates over the years. There is no real consolidated set of drawings. So part of our job was, through the tours, through the existing drawings that we have, was to build a really, really robust model, a 3D model that we can, use for takeoffs for cost estimating, that we can use for proposal design ideas to understand the actual dimensions of the space. And actually, we'll do a little sort of virtual tour of that 3D model today to walk you through some of our proposed designs. So also along the way were the red dots, where we had very specific design discussions with certain members of the library board and the full board and staff members. And again, this is just another opportunity where we are really looking forward to your feedback so that our design team can internalize it and then hopefully represent it in the drawing and designs that you guys see. So we'll walk through a little bit more specifically some of the challenges that we see. You can understand that the lower level has its problems. There are certain kind of comfort needs that are in the building, but we also wanted to kind of, try to have you guys put your design hats on and understand some of the things that we look at as designers. So one of the first challenges we find is circulation and wayfinding. Right behind us is a stair that kind of blocks how we have entered into this room. You have seating on either side, but it's an intrusion into the space at the ground level, but also at the lower level. When you go up the stairs, then there's kind of a sound backboard that bounces sound everywhere, and then you have to turn around to go all the way up. There's very difficult to find single elevator in the building that is not easy for strollers or for wheelchairs or for larger groups of people. There's some exterior ramps that are not so compliant that we need to upgrade. And then throughout the lower level, which we'll talk about how we think we can unlock the lower level, a lot of ramps that take up a lot of floor space, make it very difficult to navigate. So there's some serious challenges that we see in terms of circulation. The next one, a large program space. These are photos from the past, and here we are again, almost exactly the same. We know that the library staff can, take the extra mile and set this room up for a nice presentation. But what we don't often see is all the effort that goes in behind the scenes to move chairs out, move chairs in, set up AV, de-set up AV. So we really need a space that can hold these large events, purpose-built space, ideally where you have a lot of flexibility in space in programs like this where it's a large event.
A perfect illustration is to set up for tonight's 7 p.m. meeting. You started now at 2 p.m. Right? So that means shutting down the room and taking out of commission for most of the day just to have one meeting.
And then in addition, we know that there is a program room for a lot of children's activities, but we know that it's too small, they're limited, they have to sometimes go into other spaces in the building for large events. So there's a lot that goes into this large program space. And we'll talk about how we can design them for flexibility as we go through the finance. So another thing that actually Roger mentioned was comfort and sustainability. So we know that there are places that are comfortable or uncomfortable depending on your needs. And that needs to be fixed with a very robust intervention of upgraded mechanical and electrical systems and plumbing systems. You can see even more photos of all the different systems that exist in the building that are kind of not sufficient and kind of have problems over the years. Another thing that we'll talk about is some of the low ceiling spaces. We are standing in one of the larger, taller spaces in the building. But just on the other side of the plan behind us are very low ceiling spaces that are filled with floor to ceiling stacks, making that browsing experience not so great. I know for sure that the library staff are worried about sightlines and visibility into those spaces. So you see this is a section which we'll talk about in just a minute, but the ceiling heights are very low. So we want to think about what are the best uses of those low ceiling spaces and what are the best uses of the larger spaces like we're in now.
Great. So Jason kind of characterized a lot of the challenges that we learned about with the library as well as the aspirations for the new features that we hope to be able to provide. And when we were first engaged, the way that the library put together their request for our approach was to actually look at the needs internal to the library as well as the opportunities to potentially add space to the library to provide new functionality. So you heard about both of those things. And I would say 90% of the time we've spent going inside out, understanding both the physical infrastructure needs of the library, practical things like the leaks that are happening in the basement all the time, to the mechanical and electrical upgrades, to the functional needs of the staff as well as desires of the patrons. But there's also the outside in. When you think about a building and where it might be able to be enlarged, you have to look at the whole perimeter. So what we're looking at here is the site plan of the library. North is up. You see Park Avenue along the top. And let me just walk around the building talking about our observations, constraints for good reasons, and also opportunities to grow the building if we do. So this is the north facade of the building. That's the entrance. This is the garden in front with the ramps. we've stayed away from that because people really love it. We learned that from the board, and as we've talked to residents and learned more and more about the building, that sense of this very warm, approachable kind of Georgian building is a great thing. And it's a really nice way to kind of enter into Glencoe. Nothing necessarily needs to change about that. On the east side, the building sets back from Green Bay Road. This bay window here is really beloved. It's beautiful. So there's really no reason to push out to the east either. And so we looked at squaring off these two corners as the two opportunities to enlarge the building. And if that's what we choose to do, we think that could make a lot of sense and also create a lot of opportunities. So if we do square off the corner where I've got the highlighter now is that parking lot that's on Village Court. And that's kind of the back door. So Village Court has no retail on it. It has a parking lot on one side, it has a parking lot on the other side, and then it has a big loading dock that we all know has semis T-bowed into it sometimes. Maybe one day through the master plan that's being developed with the Village Court can be improved. This would be a first step, I think, to start that process. And so if we think about squaring off that corner with a new function room that we'll talk about, it's also an opportunity to create a new facade here that could really enliven and activate Village Court and start the process of improving that street. The idea of squaring off these two corners is also to hold back and not go any further south than the library is today. So it would not encroach on Lyman Green. It wouldn't go any further than the bay window that's there today that you guys know. But by redoing that facade and bringing it out to that line, it also creates an opportunity for us to think about engaging the green more and having the library connect through the Village Green and Village Hall. So we think that it's both solving a problem in the village as well as the library. So these are the existing plans as we know them today. We're going to walk through first the ground level and show you ideas for what we might do there, then the lower level and the upper level. This is where we're going to, we'll do the section and we'll switch to the landscape. So this is a section of the building. What we want to do here is talk about some of the major moves that you're going to see in the plans when we flip over in just a second. So on the upper right, you see a little key. That's the building from the top down. And the line is drawn with the arrows tipping up, indicating that this section is being cut through this space. It's like cutting into a cake. It's through this space and facing that way. So what you're seeing is the two stairs when you walk through. And what this section indicates is how they're separated. So when you walk in and there's a stair down to the left and a stair up to the right, that's taking up a lot of real estate in the plan. It's a little bit confusing. It's unnecessarily complicated. When you're in the lower level, you see the level changes down there. There are ramps and stairs down there that are not accessible, whether it's someone in a wheelchair or someone pushing a stroller or just carrying a heavy load. It's really disjointed and it's hard to get around. The collections, as Jason pointed out, that space in the middle left is the fiction area to your right. So when you walk in, you see this stack of books. And if it were, Northwestern University's 11 million volumes, maybe it would make sense to organize it that way. But for a community library, is that really the best way to discover the next book that you want to read? Probably not. There's no seating. It's a low ceiling height. It's very dense. We can definitely do better than that. Above it is the Hammond room. Really not functional for the kinds of programming that the library aspires to do. Andy does over 300 programs here a year. They're bursting at the seams, but if we can improve the functionality, they'll do it. And so the Hammond room is really limiting. It's great, but it's really limiting to what the library aspires to do. The children's area is really well loved, but we can imagine more of a good thing. And the Johnson room, of course, is beloved. So that was the existing section. Now what you see in our proposed section, the first thing I want to point out is the vertical circulation is tied top to bottom. So we'll show you what this looks like, but when you walk in, imagine a sun-drenched daylit stair that shows you up and shows you down and makes it really obvious where to go. So wayfinding is intuitive. It doesn't require signage. There will be signage, but it's also kind of obvious to you where you can go. That also allows us, with moving the elevator, as we'll show you, allows us to clean up the ground floor and rethink the functionality, the lower level, rethink the functionality of the lower level. A better integration of collections and reading areas, a more enjoyable space, better visual connectivity across, and more small meeting rooms where people can meet in small and medium-sized groups or study individually. So you notice where we had the stacks, which are right over there in fiction, we put the stacks. So what we're proposing is to collect most of the individual managers' offices in the library, which are in all these closets all around, and they're totally inadequate for the staff, and put them here where they can work individually and together in a functional way. And although the ceiling's a little bit low for an office, in every other way, it's going to be very functional. It's going to have daylight. It's going to be a really nice functional place for them to work. And then that's going to free up space all around the library that's not working well for anybody today. And then lastly, above, we're going to move the Hammond room and replace that with a better space in addition, and that's going to enable the children's librarians to move over to the children's workroom, storage that they badly need, and create a middle school right there. Now, this we're going to flip over to the landscape. So these are the plans that you can see out there in the library foyer, and I think we're going to leave those up here for a few weeks if people want to come back and study them. What we're going to use for this conversation is this 3D model that we've created. So these are like plans that are screwed up to show the height of the space, like a little dollhouse that comes apart. So starting on the ground floor, this is where you're walking in through the foyer, and you're entering into a space where, as I was talking about, the circulation's now up and down. It's on your right, with the elevator moved to here. So everything's really clear and accessible up and down, with visual connectivity up and down and sound coming in. A single point of service instead of two. So when you're walking the library, you're still greeted by one of the librarians, but it's just on one side, and you walk to that side instead of not being sure which one you're supposed to go to. And then from that point of service, that librarian is going to be able to see all the way up and back into the library. So it's a great location for that. Here's that staff suite I was talking about with 5 offices, including Andy's office here and the director's office, as well as a work area for them. And another thing that's going to be really nice is the book drop's going to go right in there, because today the books go in and they fall to the lower level and they get damaged, which is really unfortunate. It's also a pain in the butt for the librarians to bring them up back to the first floor. So there's a lot of inefficiency there. That's an improvement, and they'll go right into the space here for recirculation. The one change we want to consider in the Johnson is the idea of opening up these walls around the fireplace to start to connect it to the Hammond room. And that's something that gives the library optionality to have greater flow and really bring that space forward, because we really think a lot of people don't even know it's there. It's loved by many people who know about it, but it's a little bit hard to find. And so if we create better flow, the library is going to have the option to keep it open at times, close it off at times, and use these 2 reading rooms in different ways, both together and separate. So we're proposing opening there to the Hammond room. What we're doing here, for code updates, we're creating new stairs here and here. These are the egress stairs. We're bringing them up to code, and that's going to free up space here for 3 individual workrooms and small meeting rooms. And then on the southeast is one of the 2 additions we're proposing. So the library today follows that line. We're proposing to square it off, as I said, and that's going to be a 3rd reading room. And the point of that reading room is to really accommodate the outflow of the collection we're taking out of the stacks over there. It's very high density storage right now. We're going to take that out to create the office space. Those books have to go somewhere. We don't want to fill up the Johnson room and the Hammond room with them. We're going to create a 3rd reading room that starts to integrate the stacks on low shelving that you can see over, line the walls, and also integrate seating. So there's all different kinds of seating areas and ways of interacting and discovering books to be a lot nicer. And then we'll connect it to the Hammond room and out to the main circulation spine. So the library has the optionality to keep these rooms connected or separate, used in all kinds of different ways.
You mean the forte?
I'm sorry, the forte room. Yeah, the forte room. And then the Hammond room is going to be replaced in large measure by this 150-seat community meeting room over here. So here we're squaring off on the southwest side where the parking lot is today. So in its densest configuration, it would seat about 150 people, which is just more than twice the capacity of the seating here. But we're also going to show you how we can introduce a sliding partition that allows it to downscale into 2 different rooms that replace the Hammond room's functionality with 2 rooms, so they can actually have 2 programs going on at the same time or flip-flop between the 2 without a lot of downtime for setup. So now we'll go down to the lower level, and again, you're coming down the stair here, relocating the elevator to this location from its current location here allows it to touch every level. It's the one place in the whole stack of the library that we can get to every half step and full step that the library today has, because there are going to be 5 different entrances and exits. So having the elevator there, it's a big investment to move it. You see that, but it's going to create a library that's fully accessible for strollers, for wheelchairs, and for people carrying heavy loads. That move with the circulation is going to allow us to create a completely visually connected lower level, so that when you're down there, you can really see across, you can see who's using it, you can see the different collections. Again, intuitive wayfinding, so that you really feel yourself where you are in the space and what's around you. We're going to move the animal room from over here to this corner, and we're going to introduce 3 medium-sized meeting rooms down here. And so with the 5 meeting rooms upstairs, the 4 upstairs and 4 down here, it's total 8 meeting rooms to allow for different sizes of groups, individuals, pairs, and groups to work together in these kinds of spaces that we know are really kind of desired. Recently, the back of house over here has been renovated for staff. We think that's serving them well. The Friends of the Library are still going to use the space over here that they have today. It's going to be slightly reconfigured for this new stair we're going to bring up to code. And then if we go to the upper floor, what we've done here is in the Hammond room again, because we've replaced the needs of the Hammond room down with the 2 sides of the community meeting room, we're able to let that space become a place for the children's librarians, added storage. The middle school room can flow into that space, and then we can sort of rethink the computer room over here, which we think is a big opportunity. And we've also added an extension here, which sits on top of that reading room that I showed you down in the southeast corner, which is, again, more of a good thing. So we're going to create, if we do a 1-story addition there, we thought it was a great opportunity to look at doing a 2nd addition for incremental added costs and really give the children's library more space to do more of the program that they do. The children love to stand and look at the trains, so we're going to get them even closer. So walking through the plans, just want to recap a few things that we pointed out and sort of bring them together for you. So one really important theme here is the idea of improving the vertical connectivity, intuitive wayfinding. And so what you're seeing on the left is a diagram of the library with the highlighting the vertical stair and elevator together, working in an efficient and also transparent way. So again, now it's sun-drenched, it's clear up and down. And what happens when you start to do moves like that is you can get spaces that are really welcoming. So you walk in and you feel a sense of where you want to go, you feel welcomed by the stair. On the lower left is an image of what that could start to look like. You're walking in, circulation desk on your left, great light and views back to Wyman Green, drawing you back. On the right is the stair that leads you both up and down. And just to show you what that's going to unlock on the lower level, today the existing stair down and the CD collection in Hamel room really create blockages in that space, and we know there's a lot of ups and downs with ramps and stairs. So by removing those elements and replacing them with a more open stair in the elevator, the location you described, we're going to be able to connect that all the way east to west, which is going to be a big improvement. And those meeting rooms I mentioned, small and medium-sized meeting rooms, we can think of them doing all kinds of different things. They're for studying, they're for group work, they're for teenagers hanging out, they could be enhanced with technology, they could be made into sensory rooms for families with different needs. Or we could think of teenagers and their kinds of needs. So these are just examples from our part of those rooms, and they could be many different things. Turning to the addition on the southeast corner, that's what we're looking at here. We're highlighting the lower level, which would be the 3rd reading room, as well as the extension of the children's area. We would be adding space for children's collections and furniture and activity for the different age groups. We'd be viewing the trains. And we'd be, as I said, expanding the collection space down on the 1st floor as well. And what this also opens up is the opportunity for an outdoor space. So we could think about putting that outdoor space on top of the forte where it sits today. On the southwest corner, this is highlighting the addition that would provide a large program space for 150 seats, different kinds of seating configurations. It's going to be supported by what we call a pre-function area, which allows people to kind of gather before they go in, additional restrooms, as well as storage on both sides, so that there's easy in and out for chairs and tables and other things that will be used regularly. This is an example from our Appleton Public Library. As I said, it's open a couple of months. Still city. We're envisioning a space, it's not yet designed, we need a lot of feedback, I want to hear from you, but we're envisioning a space that's warm, views outside to nature, really functional, and again, subdivisible. So it can have large meetings, it can have large groups, but it can also have smaller groups. And on two sides of a folding wall, you can go back and forth between them, or you can have simultaneous programming. So that's going to be really exciting, enhanced functionality for the library. So sustainability, energy efficiency, carbon, healthy materials, and really inviting in one place for the residents. Just this being a community building. All those things kind of tie together under the overarching theme of sustainability. So even the idea that this space is welcoming and it's ADA accessible, that's part of sustainability. The idea that the materials and finishes and the new construction is low carbon, the idea that we're preserving what's here today with its embodied carbon footprint, all of that is sustainability. Upgrading the MEP systems to be more energy efficient and useful for a longer lifespan, that's contributing. We're proposing to take the building from running on both electricity and natural gas, fossil fuels, to all electric. And that investment is going to pay for itself over time. But it also means that as the grid greens, which is expected to do, the building becomes more and more low carbon over time. And that's the trend in all the work we do, and we always recommend that investment. Daylight. So that's a big deal in all our buildings, but nowhere more so than the library. Connecting to nature, so the idea that on the south facade, you can really open things up and connect to Wyoming Green and bring those beautiful old oak trees into the experience of the library is really exciting. Opportunity, flexibility, so this building serves the community for a long time, means the building will be used for a longer time. All that sits under the guise of sustainability. Resiliency, meaning we improve today's library to withstand the floods downstairs, to last longer, to be useful longer, and thinking about how technology can be integrated that we're going to use today and also be changed as we look forward to tomorrow. All those are the themes we think about sustainability. So now we're going to move on to implementation. So what we did is we priced everything you saw, but we priced it as menu options so that the board, with input from the community, can decide how they want to proceed. The total project cost is estimated to be $17.3 million. So that's everything we just went over. We benchmark that against the libraries and other similar project types that we've been doing, and we think that's a reasonable place to be. I just want to point out for people who know hard costs and soft costs. The hard cost, which is the trades and the markups, is $11.9 million. The total project cost, which includes many other things, would be 17.3. But that's the number you should think about. So how does that break down? I don't know if these are big enough for everyone to read, but I'll read them out loud. The program space edition on the southwest, which is shown here, is $2.7 million. The collection space edition on the southeast is $2.4 million. Consolidating the staff workers and moving them over to the new staff suite where fiction is $700,000. This is really important. The mechanical, electrical, and plumbing needs of the building to upgrade them and provide the infrastructure that we need for the next generation for this 83-year-old building is $5.3 million. So it's almost a third of the total project cost. And just to remind you, that's new HVAC, it's upgrading the electrical, it's bringing it up to code, as Roger mentioned, it's lining drain tile around the foundation, and it's providing new plumbing where we'll need new bathrooms to expand. The new stair and egress stair update is $500,000. The new elevator is a big investment, $1.2 million, but it's really important because it really unlocks all of the local connectivity and the new changes we want to make. And then everything else we just categorize as interior upgrades, which is many things. We're not going to do too much to this room, but every other space in the library could probably use some TLC when it comes to interior design. And so we have a catch-all for that at $4.475 million. That these numbers reflect an assumed construction schedule that would start in 26 and be completed by 28. And so what are the next steps? Well, we were excited to hear the Q&A tonight. The first step is community feedback. There's a survey that's on your chair. It's going to be open for the next couple of weeks so that all of you and others in the village can have input. share feedback on what they see tonight. We're going to leave the boards up in the library for a few weeks as well. We're going to update, we're going to collect all those responses, we're going to update the master plan and complete it for the board. And then the board is going to make a decision about what they want to do in terms of next steps before the end of the year, which is include discussion of financing, next steps, timing. And then if everything goes according to hope, plainly hope, we would be completing in 2028. And with that, we'd love to hear some Q&A from the community.
And thank you. Did you get the house lights back on? Thanks, Grace. All right, so this brings us to the Q&A portion of tonight. If anyone has questions and they're comfortable coming up to the podium, you just come around and queue up on the outside aisle here. If you prefer to ask a question from where you're seated, just raise your hand, ask away, and then if we need to, if you can't hear all the way, I'll repeat it. Oh, thank you. Okay. Teresa?
I do have a question, and that is how is the collection going to be affected in terms of numbers?
So that's a great question. I knew it would come from you, Teresa, former library trustee. So right now we have about 70,000 total items in the collection. We feel that that would be a little too big. We are a popular materials library, and we're part of a 28 library consortium. That means your Glencoe Public Library card gives you access to 27 other collections. Near neighbors such as Winnetka, Wilmette, Glenview, as far out as Huntley. And those materials that you request can come back, can get to you into your hands within a couple of days. We are not looking at significantly reducing the collection of Teresa. We're looking at right-sizing the collection. That's kind of a hot word these days. But we truly don't know what a right-sized collection is. But I have a wonderful team here that will calculate. We'll look at the data that we have in terms of cert counts and all that sort of fun stuff, and determine what the right course is for the collection itself. We also are very mindful that we're going to keep playing with both digital and print. As long as I've been here, and I've been here for 8 years, print is the most popular format. So we will maintain that. We'll make sure that your materials get into your hands, the ones that you want. But we also recognize that digital is getting bigger. It's getting more and more popular. So we're going to invest in that as well. We're going to complement those two together.
Can
I just wanted to add a little, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I just wanted to add a little something with our experience with Chicago Public Libraries. We used to really construct and renovate buildings to grow the collections. And now what we're doing is we're really just expecting changes with our collections. About 30% of every collection is out circulating anyway. So to have kind of empty real estate on shelves and not have spaces for people to sit or spaces for technology is a little bit of a bad use of space. Or we thought that it was a little bit of a bad use for space as well. So it's really more of a reconfiguration rather than kind of a lessening.
Yeah, then the other thing I'll add is that, the plans that you saw, it's way too early to tell the exact linear foot of shelving, because there's a lot of decision that goes into that. How tall are the shelves? You can see that the bottom of all these shelves is not actually being used because it's very difficult for people to bend down. And then likewise, if you go too tall, and there's a limit there. So you don't know exactly, it's hard, it's too hard for us to say exactly the collection amount right now because we're in a space plan phase. But what we can say is that we've been sort of checking with the library staff and with Andy and making sure that more or less regardless of the decision on how big the actual collection is, we have space to accommodate it in the design.
What are the plans for keeping the library open and accessible during construction?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I don't have that answer. I'm sorry, I wish I did. But what we're looking at is a full building renovation. We want to pursue this. We hope that the community supports this plan. But with something this massive of a project in scale, it's 18 months minimum. I mean, that's the number that we've been playing around. It's really not really discussing that with the architects, but just us, just kind of steeling ourselves, getting ready for something like this. I can tell you that at the Northbrook Public Library where I worked at before here, we did a $6 million renovation of the first floor. And that was about 20 months long. It was very similar to this project where they, Northbrook added a 200+ seat auditorium, redid their program spaces in the entire lobby. It was painful. It was absolutely painful. But what we decided to do there was we phased the project. So we did it in a way that we kept the building open. Not all parts of the building, some parts were restricted, of course, but we did that because we knew that the community wanted to keep coming into the library to use resources and see its staff, etc. But I will say that it added about 6 months onto the project. So we're going to talk about that once we get into pre-construction, and the board will decide what's the best course for that. But we recognize our role in this community. We recognize it's very important to be open and be accessible. But we also did learn from the pandemic. When we shuttered our doors during the pandemic, we shifted very quickly to remote reference, ready reference online. We did curbside. We purchased an outdoor locker system, etc. So we'll take those lessons that we learned then and we'll apply it to the future. Yes, sir.
With regard to sustainability, moving to full electric is going to be more expensive substantially for the first 5 to 8 years. But are there plans to try to get LEED certification with solar on the roof, for example, change the plantings, the installation, that sort of thing, to truly make the building more sustainable, rather than depending on the outside forces to make you more efficient, by assuming that we'll have solar power somewhere that the whole electrical is going to be on that. What are you planning to do for this building itself?
Those are great suggestions, and we'd love to.
Yeah.
We'd love to incorporate ideas like that. We'll evaluate all of them within the next phase of design. And what we like to do with those kinds of suggestions and ideas are look at the ROI and make sure that that fits within the framework of our budget from a payback point of view. So, for example, solar panels on the roof, they have a payback period. Currently, the Illinois grid is about 57% green, and we do see the grid greening over time. That's the trend, and that's where it's expected to go. So we like the philosophy of the all-electric building, but that's an investment too, as you pointed out, and it's one that has a payback period as well in terms of carbon. So we'd like to take a deeper look at all the options available. We haven't actually talked about specifically going after LEED Gold or Platinum. Chinatown Library got Platinum. A lot of our buildings were able to achieve those benchmarks, and we'd be extremely enthusiastic to work with the community on it.
Yes, sir.
Sorry,
Oh,
just to add, in the cost estimate that you saw, there was an inclusion of updating the windows. And it's not an easy thing to do because we want to match the look and style and everything. But these, in an old building like this, those are the most susceptible for low efficiency because the insulation is very poor. And even if you give a very efficient mechanical system, you're going to have energy loss in those areas. So that's all included, and that will be part of the work that we do on the enclosure of the buildings.
Yes, sir.
A couple of questions as it relates to finance. One, your experience, Steve's experience, from inception to the final phase. You budgeted for a certain amount of money. It's going to take 4 years. Typically, how close to budget at your last budget?
Yeah.
And secondly, how does the city plan to finance?
Maybe our client should answer that question.
Well, Skidmore and Samara came in, or SOM came in very, very close to budget on all 3 of the projects that I worked closely with them on. We didn't have a capital budget at Chicago Public Library. And so, coming from Chicago, it probably isn't good to say that we got a little creative with the budget, but creative in a good way. And so, we had very, very finite budgets in order to work with. And I think that the issue with SOM is that they listen. And when budget would come back and it would be, and I'll be honest, $2 or $3 million over what it is that we were able to pay them, we would sit down with a sort of a list of ingredients and go through the list of ingredients and say, this has to come off, this has to come off, and this has to come off. So I think it really just comes down to them being able to listen and understand.
Thanks, Andrea. So we also work with a kind of target value design mentality. So we put that out there. It's very conceptual right now. The plans are just ideas and they're about the level of development you saw. So we worked with our cost estimator to add a layer of conservatism to them that we think is appropriate at this stage. So there's, for example, a 20% factor for what we call design contingency, which is the evolution of the design over time. Ideas that you guys bring forward or we bring forward that aren't really captured right now. So that's in there. There's escalation. One thing I'll say is the last few years, up until about a year ago, were crazy inflation. And so a lot of our projects actually went off course because that was unforeseen by the contractors and it was to some degree unforeseen by us. More unforeseen by the contractors. But that's calmed down a little bit and it's back down. And it seems like the supply chain is more or less back in order. And so we're hoping that things go back to normal and our cost estimates do hold.
Yeah, just talking about contingency, there's design contingency in the early phases, and then as you get more detailed and go into construction, there's construction contingency. In the Appleton Public Library, we're finishing in a couple of months and we'll be on budget. And that was because there was $1 million construction contingency for unforeseen things in existing buildings. So that's something that we would carry through. Obviously, the contingency will get lower and lower as you get more details into design. The other thing that you know, as Adam mentioned, you know, sometimes these projects go out to bid in very unpredictable markets and escalation and everything. And one way that we found around it in Appleton was to meet with every single subcontractor that was potentially going to bid on the job to talk about things that they were seeing as cost effective so that we can incorporate it into our design. So we were trying to get as directly close to market conditions as possible before you go out to bid.
And the question that everyone probably has on their mind, right? How are we paying for this? We have had, in all honesty, we've had some very early preliminary discussions about referendum. But we will not go to referendum until we know that's the last option that we have to fund this project. The board has already begun discussions about capital campaign, possibly fundraising, seeking private donations, things of that nature, naming rights, everything. So we're going to do everything that we can to try and finance this project on our own. But if we cannot, yes, we will start talking about it.
Andy, can you describe the community demand that leads you to dedicate such an enormous amount of space for 150 people without using that room for something else when there is?
Absolutely, yeah. So why do we need such a large program space in a community of less than 9,000 people? It's because you come. You come to every program that we hold. And a lot of times, as we were talking about earlier, or Adam was discussing in this presentation, the amount of work hours, staff hours, whether it's prelim planning, the actual plan, the actual doing, and then the actual undoing, that takes up a lot of our time. But besides that, I mean, we also have a long history of attracting people to our programs, whether they're our own, co-sponsored or collaborative projects with other local agencies. We used to hold Friends concerts in this space here, and those concerts averaged about 140 people. We expect that when we build it, you guys will come. Because we have a whole slate of program ideas ready. We are ready to, and a lot of these program ideas that my staff have, we cannot do. We just can't do. We would like to. because we feel that it enriches the lives of this community, gives greater opportunity to discover and learn. And we feel that a program space will do that. But what we love most about the idea is that it's partitionable, that we can hold multiple programs in a single day in the same space. And it doesn't take as much work to actually flip the room back.
What's the closest in the downtown area for a space that large that's existing right now?
Right. I can't think of it. Maybe take a community center. It's good, the atrium. I saw a bunch of hands go up, I'm sorry. Yeah. Louis?
The timeline that you put up with the board making a decision in December, it strikes me as a pretty quick time frame. I'm not sure you're going to, it gives adequate time for you to go back and forth with people in the community as to what they want. I thought it was a very impressive plan, very creative. But I would urge you not to downsize the collection very much. I personally think it's at the bare minimum. We really compete with Winnetka, and increasingly I'm finding it's easier to go to Winnetka because they have more books than we do, more books that I want, and I think we're sort of at the bottom end of where we should be. The other thing is I would be reluctant to open up this space on both sides of the fireplace. I like the open layout generally that you proposed, but I don't think it should be the entire library. And I think you lose a certain amount of the charm in this room if you eliminated, it's like this wall here, that wall there would be an opening. I'm not sure that's a good idea, but maybe it'd be just fine. It's really hard to visualize without seeing the actual rendering of it.
Yeah, thank you. There's a lot there I want to touch on. I'm probably going to forget one or two, so please remind me of the ones I do. First, you were talking about the openings. We actually feel that in terms of the design and what the SOM has proposed, we actually think that it'll increase the usage of the space. We've recognized for a very long time how beloved this room is. We see that, but the elements of this room that people really enjoy are the barrel vaulted ceilings and the fireplace. No one seems to talk about the shelving. Now, to your point, Louis, I understand that it may take away from the charm, but I think it's an exciting idea that we want to pursue and we want to look at, because again, the outcome of that is greater discovery of the other ends of the building, especially the forte room. It's an underutilized space. It's a beautiful space, and we want to make sure that that's something that people know and enjoy. There are some other things. You talked about the timeline itself. We set the timeline years ago with the idea that we could finish a renovation by the end of 2028. Part of that requires the board to adopt a space plan by the end of 2024. Now, if the board doesn't feel comfortable and it gets extended, so be it. We would have to have conversations with SOM about that. But it also depends on what we receive in terms of feedback tonight. If there are elements in the feedback that require us to go back to the lab and talk again and re-envision some spaces, then we will. But we won't know that until 2 weeks from today. In terms of the collection size, I get it. But the difficulty here for us is balancing space needs for collection, patron use, and staff. As we've heard all night, my staff, your library staff, work in closets. Some of your staff actually take their work home and do it there, and I don't like that. That's not policy for me, and I'm pretty policy driven, so I don't like that either. So maybe thinking of it this way, what the staff present you in collections, programs, and services, they do with the bare minimum of space and amenities necessary to do their work. So it's a tough balancing act, and I heard a lot of applause about don't touch the collection, don't reduce the size of the collection. We get it. You want everything ready at your fingertips. We understand that. But again, we're going to lean on the CCS consortium. We're a charter member of this consortium. We have neighbors that are 1.5 miles, 2 miles away. Now, we understand that it may be inconvenient for you to go there to get the books. So we're going to try and get the books here. But also, when we look at our statistics in circulation, there are items that do not circulate, that sit on the shelves and take up that valuable space, that real estate, that can be given to something else that's a greater priority. I recognize and I totally understand the concern that when we talk about reducing the size of the collection. But our opinion is that there is fat to trim. Now again, we're not getting rid of, Twain and et cetera, but we are a popular materials library, right? We're not an academic library. We don't have 11 million items in our collection, nor do we aspire to have that. But what we are seeing now with technology and things that are trending towards, in the future is digital. Digital is there. Digital is here to stay. And we feel that it can complement the print collection, not take over. I feel like I missed a couple of areas.
One other point.
Bogarting their time here.
Worry about having, this is such a fine project. I'm worried about having to close a substantial part of the library for 18 months if that's what is necessary to get it done.
Yeah.
Because this is an excellent.
Joanne,
How will the Friends have their book sales?
that's a discussion we'll have.
During
internally. Yeah, during construction, we don't know. Wait, now, I just want to kind of maybe do a little check here. This is a space planning event. As I did much more poorly with my staff last month when I presented the space plan, there were a lot of questions about detail. There were a lot of questions about procedure and operation, and we don't have that yet. What we have right now is a really great idea that we want to share with you and get feedback for. But in terms of the questions about how many books are going to be in the collection and what are we going to do with the Friends book sales and all the other details, we don't have the answer to that. But we recognize the importance of the Friends. We recognize that the sales are community events. And we want to make sure that those stay and remain as fluid as they do right now. But for me to give you an answer would be a lie. I can't give you that yet. Yes. Yes.
I'd like to give just a little bit on the idea that it's beautiful room, ceiling, and the fact. This room is like a shop. I mean, it's got these beautiful bay windows, it's got light, it's beautiful paneling. It's a reading room or an old-fashioned library, like a country home in England. So I mean, and when I talk to people who don't live in Glasgow, and I say I live in Glasgow, once a week people say, "Oh, you're liars." I mean, I know people that come here just to read in this room. Maybe you can bring their book from home to sit by the fire in a comfy chair and read in a room that's kind of like being in an old-fashioned reading room, and it stays. So, I mean, I know that I'm sort of reaching to the choir here, but I think there's a lot more to like about this room. I would like to see this turned into a totally contemporary space, like a lot of the photos you showed, because that's not what this particular room is about, And there's a lot of other details, like the staircase. I totally get it if you want to have a more efficient staircase, but even the staircase is beautiful, right? So maybe those elements could be reused. I mean, I don't know. I think that. This building from Michigan actually is pieces that were built at different times. The only part that's really beautiful is old.
We heard that sentiment over and over again, exactly as you said it, and we agree. This room is quite nice, and it's really loved by the community. So we don't have any intention to change the character of this room. And if some of the images we showed implied that we did, that wasn't the intent. Not for this space. Because when people say they love the Glencoe Library, they love the feel of it. What is it you love? It's this room. So we did propose the idea of opening up here to create more connectivity. The whole plan doesn't hinge on that. That idea is isolated to itself and doesn't have other locations. So that's the kind of thing we can discuss and debate and take lots of input on and ultimately make a decision that some people may love and maybe not everybody will. And they will decide to keep it just the way it is. That's a future decision. That level of detail is not what the board is looking to ratify. But thank you for the comment because we really do hear that over and over again. So we hear everything you just said.
And I just want to touch on the staircase. My staff know that that staircase scares me every single day. Because it's about 23 steps down, with no middle landing whatsoever. So when I have my office door open, and I hear the kids out in the main driveway playing, and then I see that very adventurous child decide that they want to scale that railing or stand right at the edge of that top step just to look down, that scares me. And in this instance, my fear trumps that. Adrian.
Yeah, two space planning questions. I want to understand how you came up with the idea of 8 meeting rooms. And my second question is about maker space. I mean, a lot of libraries have them. I didn't hear anything. I'm just wondering.
So with the number of meeting rooms, we talked about having, that was in our RFQ. We know we needed additional meeting spaces. The Hamel room is our one and only study. That accommodates, has an occupancy of 6. It is regularly used, but we also recognize that the Hammond room is also well used by residents, community groups, small book groups, etc. So there's a bit of friction when it comes to that, and it comes in high demand. So we started looking at how many more we can add. Now that number, it's 8, but we have, I want to remind you that we can create one large space or several smaller spaces, just depending on need and whoever's reserving it, that sort of thing. I'm sorry, Jeff.
Well, I was wondering about, I'm sure you thought about a maker space.
Yeah.
Decided against, just.
Yeah. What is it? So a makerspace is it's a digital media lab. It has 3D printing. Natalie, help me out. What else do we have?
Yeah, well, a lot
Yeah.
of them will have, like laser cutters, sewing machines, different technology-based crafting and learning, usually heavy digital.
So a makerspace or a digital media lab, whatever you want to call it, that was not a priority when we surveyed the community. We know that D35 has a very robust offerings for their students. And I think that kind of shows that they don't have that need from us. And again, as we prioritize things, we can ask 100 different people what they need from the library. List us 5 things, and we'll get a lot. So we're just trying to prioritize everything. So when we talked about maker spaces, it just didn't pop up as a priority for this community coming in.
Andy, can I just say that really quickly?
Getting back to budget issues at Chicago Public Library in some cases as well, we had to be creative about developing maker spaces and other technology spaces in some of our libraries. And some of them also come as a kit of parts. So if you have a space that is flexible enough to accommodate that activity in the space, Andy can, purchase or can write a grant or, get the materials needed in order to do that activity in the space. So the idea that you have flexible sort of black boxes as meeting rooms is a way to have those kinds of activities in the library.
I can add just one quick thing on generally the location. We tried to place those meeting rooms preliminarily in the plan. Of course, we can have discussions with y'all of how many exactly do they need and the exact use of those. We position them in places, for example, in the lower level at the end of the wall. We don't want to interrupt sight lines. We want to find places that are kind of bookends to really get the best use out of that space. And then I personally had to take a call after our workshops here, and I couldn't find a room, and I had to ask someone, and they sent me down to the panel. So we think that there's obviously a need. The exact number is part of the design process that we'll go through.
Back there. Yes. You mean in the study spaces or in the? Yeah, in terms of tech equipment, we have not discussed that. That's another thing that we've categorized or listed under details that will come after or as a next step. But, you know, when we think about specifically that large program space, we get really excited about what's possible in that room. So in terms of speccing out that space, we haven't done that.
We did include an allocation in the budget under that kind of catch-all for furniture and equipment and technology. So there's a line item there, but it's kind of the next level of detail to actually spend.
Yeah.
So I'm speaking as a former reference librarian and many programs. I just want to say this community extremely and it's charming. But what this gentleman said about that, the reason we want to do reno, and staff said without hands around renovation, but the reason people come in the building are for 5 sensory experiences. Senior-based stuff. And as a former long-time children's library, I think getting rid of hands-on, I can do technology anywhere. And when I see everybody on their screens, and we're in the middle of loneliness, as stated by our U.S. Surgeon General, stage behaviors from 2023, 170 million people with 0 friends. Okay, what 20 friends? Well, I know a lot of people. All of them. Who's really here? The centerpiece, the reason why we want to do it is to get people in the library talking. It's supposed to be a room that we talk in and downstairs we do quiet spaces. So we have that, we have print stuff, we have one program, all that, because it's just technology I can do anywhere. I don't necessarily care about coming here to them, because that's something I can do anywhere. You want to jam in the Andy Griffith, music band and run rock and celebrate that and be with that. Because there's kids, every train station says 80 months are going on stage. I have a friend who's already creating Japanese. This is my passion, this is my girls. When you start thinking about all of this currency, human connection, talking, I also it's also something saving lives. So it's we're here, we're spiritual beings having a human experience, and a library wants to do that. And I totally support them. But Prince getting people together, talking, break bread, talk to people, oh yeah, hi, and I'm also sitting there. So, but it gets weird sometimes. Well, we realize, well, this is the place that you do. You could even have a thing overhanging out the side of this building, an outdoor patio, out this camera obscure looking window. It's gorgeous. And I really believe so that this room of therapy.
Thank you. Yep. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Peru. I could spend a lot of time in this room writing at that table by a beautiful window. I wonder, I never heard from any of you how used is the library for a little bit, for 9,000 people and people travel all over. Study, are there 300 people a day come into the library? 300 people a week?
Yes, more. So we do track our visits. We track as much as we possibly can, and we have several data junkies on staff here that pore over those numbers to see where the success is and can we replicate it. So when you ask, in a town with less than 9,000 people, how well are we used? Well, just a couple of years ago, Library Journal magazine recognized us as a 5-star library, and one of the requisites for being awarded 5 stars is the number of visits you get per capita. And we exceed 70,000 visits per year. So it's a very well-used space. There are certain times we can break down it by hour, and a lot of times, busiest times are between 9 and 10, right before story time, and then after 3 o'clock when school lets out. Now, pre-pandemic, we used to have many more evening programs, and that would be that third branch of time where we get very busy. But since then, we've been kind of rebuilding that, and we have seen people return. Not to pre-pandemic levels, but pretty darn close. So we are a very well-used building, visited quite often by many, and not just our residents. Over and over again, we hear at our service desk that I live in Highland Park, I live in Winnetka, I live in Northbrook, I live in Deerfield, but I come here. So this is an attraction, and we have recognized that. So yes, why all this big hullabaloo about our tiny little building, in our tiny little town? Because you deserve it, and you told us that you love us. So we want to make sure we carry that on for the next several generations to come. Yes, Barney.
I would rather spend $17 million on this library than $17 million on a golf course.
Teresa, do you have one?
Just one comment. I was on that library and I will tell you, you don't know how much money we spend on Band-Aid fixes. And so this price is in the long run, I think it saves a lot of money. So that's
Yes.
Are there any revenue opportunities that could happen? Is there any way that we could somehow pay for a portion?
Yeah, I mean, we I don't know how serious of a conversation we've had on the board level, but in terms of revenue opportunities, it's possible. I mean, but you know, in the large programs, absolutely. Again, in the 8 years that I've been here, I've had half a dozen people come up and say, "Can I rent the library for my?" Fill in the blank. And we say, "I'm sorry, we can't. We don't have the infrastructure, we don't have the staffing to do that sort of thing. We don't have the insurance to do that." But with this plan, we may. But in terms of other revenues, even if they're smaller stream, minor revenues, I'm of the camp that I don't like charging for much here in the library. This is an institution that's paid by property taxes. So you're already paying in, right? So I don't want a nickel and dime. The board doesn't want a nickel and dime. We could, but we don't want to. We just don't want to. About 5 years ago now, we did away with charging for DVDs. 4 years from now, or years ago, we went fine free. That's the spirit. That's the true spirit of a public library, in my opinion. And we want to keep moving that forward. Question or comment?
But beyond that, if you really want to get buy-in, if you want to find out who's not going in line, who are the missing stakeholders, what would get them? And then they get a lot of lost, figure out figure out how to do that.
Seems like you've been reading the board minutes. Yes, sir.
Just a quick comment. What we presented tonight is the idea to modernize and expand what's already here.
Right.
I moved here 8 years ago. My son tried to do study various times, but there was not enough room, especially around the 3:30 hour. Tutoring. Get there half an hour early, like, and my son, so you can get a seat. These are the small things that if you want to keep this building and the historical significance of it, unfortunately, it's not cheap. You heard it, we have a show where you're drafting wall. I mean, we had ended our home and I had to go to my house and all over the back of the chicken wire. So it's one of those things where if it's an investment that we as a community wants to invest in, realize that we're not only for Blanco, it's for the other communities that come. They have authors come here for book signings, for book statements. They have presentations in regards to subjects A to Z. So why are we doing it? It's not only for the community, but it's for my kids to come back. If it, I want to hold a meeting in regards to an issue that maybe some other venues won't hold, but the library will hold it and will have the capacity to hold it comfortably. I'm not saying I'm not comfortable around, I'm just saying that. So I love this room. Walk in, especially in the fall when it's sort of a fire going. I'm ready to pass out. That's more so I don't. But it's the essence of the building. That's why we're starting keeping the front of the side, and expanding that. You saw the room in which your goal, your employees work, I commend them, I thank them, because they were going to be an ocean. So, building new, unfortunately, has limitations on it. We have to know the old Uber compact that's coming in. And they're saying 20 to 25 homes. Yeah. So 29 homes, let's just say they're only 4 buildings. So they're looking at over 100 people moving into our community. And they will go to Tatum. They will go to our town for local downtown for others. But the library is what I remember in my things of going to for tutoring, for community events, to check out a book for the fun project. So I think that, yes, it's not an easy power to swallow. But the next question is, if not, then what are our options? And unless we're willing to tear down the buildings, tear this down completely and build new, that's what they consider, and that's what the plan was from the architects, from my understanding. And I think their plan incorporates new technology, new design, open environment, sunlight, by retaining the history of the building, and that's, in my opinion, that makes it possible.
Thanks for those comments. I just wanted to add one thing. I think every one of us here would agree that even if there was an opportunity to build new, I don't think we would. We wouldn't want to. And we have the benefit that buildings last 80 years, and when we approach projects, we take it very seriously, and we think of the next 100 years beyond that. And we all have the benefit, especially in this room, of wood and durable materials and things that will last multiple generations. So I think we're really happy with the comments there, because I think it's something that we bring to our projects. Thank you very much.
We have about a couple minutes left. Are there any other questions? Yes.
My voice for people who say, don't shave down the collection.
Thank you.
Because this gentleman, a couple rows ahead of me, goes to an aircraft for a book. I go to Little Neck for magazines. And at 10 in the morning, that magazine room is full. You can't get a chair, a comfortable chair. Buy the collection.
Thank you. Thank you.
There was the comment that a lot of extra money gets spent on very short-term solutions to that. Can you speculate on what that amount might be and the consequence, that's what we're saving by doing this.
You mean over your annually on average, or?
Whatever you're supposed to look at, if it's happening, you know, every month, then it sounds like
Yeah.
a recurring expense that you're going to eliminate.
So I,
That kind of breaks it.
yeah, so maybe I can answer it this way. When I started here in 2016, the budget for buildings and maintenance was $85,000. So we allocated $85,000 of our operating funds to repairs and maintenance. Today, it's about $145,000. And it's not because we haven't done anything with the past 85, it's just that more problems arise. And even the solutions that we thought were solutions 5 years ago were not. What we really need to do is take a very holistic and comprehensive look at the building systems. Piecemealing it doesn't work anymore. In 2016, the library board adopted a facility assessment plan that called for about 36 different projects, small projects, in lieu of going all in. The big all-in for the board then was the HVAC project in 2017 and 18. So we exhausted that. We completed that assessment. And we still have these conditions. And then we discovered new problems after we did the 2021 assessment, problems that we had no idea existed. So in terms of hard dollars, do I know how much we'll save after post-construction? I don't. But I do know that just in terms of what we're looking at, instead of Band-Aid here, stitch here, you know, some plaster, don't look over here anymore, kind of thing. We're gonna fix it all and start all over again. And I think that's the right course to take. Okay, we have time for one more question. And now just remind, if anyone has questions that we couldn't get to today and answer tonight, please respond to the QR code survey. The little handouts were on your seats when you first came in. We'll be taking all of that, and I promise you that the board and management team and us will be looking at that. So we have time for one more question. Is there one more question up there?
Thank you, Andy.
All right. Thanks, everyone.